Please welcome Ryan DeGood, our Vice President of Product.
All right. I just got validation of a 25-year-old strategy from Peter. It's quite fascinating. He said to be successful in IT now, you have to get inside people's heads. 25 years ago, I decided to get a degree in psychology as well as computer science. And so obviously, I made the right choice. Now, I'm not analyzing everybody right now, so don't worry about that. But what I want to do now, and just taking a lead from that book by Andrew McAfee and his peers, is talk to you about how you can become digital masters, because I think that's a pretty fascinating term. And what I want to do is show you how you can do that in the spirit of this connected world that we all live in now. So earlier, you heard from Ian, my colleague, about this fascinating company, Acme Incorporated. And you heard about Acme's fleet of trucks that drive all around the countryside doing stuff. Now, you're probably wondering, what is it Acme does? Well, at the end of the day, Acme has to get out there and help a whole bunch of people service equipment. They have to deal with classic field service work. People have problems with equipment. They want to be able to talk to Acme about that. Now, what happens historically? Acme has an entire contact center full of people. They're picking up the phone every single day, taking calls and registering cases in their case management system. Now, that's an interesting concept, but Acme is really struggling to scale. And what Acme is looking for is a way to build a customer self-service experience. So what I'm going to do is take you through a little bit of that process in the Nintex Workflow Cloud, show you how you can leverage the power of that Workflow Cloud to connect all the systems you care about to get your job done much more quickly. Now, bear with me here. I've got to close this thing up. I've got about 15 minutes, so actually now 13 minutes on the clock. I'm going to show you a lot of stuff. Now, for a lot of you, this Workflow Cloud will be new. We have a bunch of sessions over the next couple of days. In fact, one following up right on from this that I'd encourage you all to get to. And if you have any questions, I have my entire product management team here. They'd love to engage with you to talk more about what we're up to. So with that, let me jump into the Workflow Cloud. Now, you can see it on the screen in front of you right now, and I have a whole bunch of different workflows in this environment. What I'm going to do is go ahead and take this one called the InspireX workflow. It's a shell of a workflow. I've already built a little bit of this out. It's basically capturing some information, putting it into a customer management, incident management system. In this case, we're using Salesforce, could easily be using Dynamics CRM. I'll show you a bit of that later as well. And then it's going to send out one of these Acme drivers to do some work. But what I want to do is create that form, that way for people to self-serve, to be able to register their issues. Now, earlier from Ian, you saw how that Project Zinc was helping out SharePoint on-premise and Office 365. What I want to do is show you how we can take that same technology and apply it to the Nintex Workflow Cloud. So here I have the start configuration for this workflow, some data that I want to capture, and I'd like to customize the form experience behind this. Simple matter of clicking on Edit Form, and you'll see that we get a basic form put together by that Zinc experience. Now, what I want to do is customize it a little bit. So first of all, I'm just going to delete a few fields from here because I don't just want to capture text boxes. I want to make a slightly more intelligent form. I'll get rid of a few of these controls. So right now, I'm capturing customer, the name, and some details. Now, much like Ian was showing you, I'm just going to make this form a little bit easier to manage, so move some controls around. But what I'm interested in doing here is just capturing a little bit of data, and we're going to use a choice field to do that in the first instance. Now, what I have to be able to do is bind this form field quickly to workflow variables. Now, the first thing I'm going to do is just give this a name, and so in this case, this is going to be the priority of the case. So when someone registers this, it's a high priority case, a low priority case, or the likes. We're going to make that a set of radio buttons. We'll just put in the values for that. So we're going to have this as low, medium, and high. With default value, we'll set this to low. And then what we're going to do is bind that to the severity field that comes into the workflow to power things. Now, of course, I want to make that a little bit of a smaller form, so I'm just going to make that a horizontal layout. And then we're going to go ahead and do a similar sort of exercise over here for the products. So, obviously, this customer is going to send in some details. They've got a problem. It's with a specific product. So we'll go ahead. We'll call this product. We'll go ahead and bind that. Let's choose drop-down list first. We'll bind this to the product control. And we'll put in some values here. So this customer is going to have problems with their UPS devices. We'll have server problems. We'll have some PC problems. And we'll have some air conditioning unit problems. For those of you who don't know, we've got a guy here called Andrew Connell, AC. He's a celebrity in the SharePoint space. He'll have a session coming up shortly. I like to think of AC when I put that value in there. So now that we've got that added to it and we've got that bound to the appropriate field, I want to go ahead and capture that data, the location. Where is the Acme customer reporting this problem from? So I'll just drop in this geolocation control now. Immediately we get that hooked up to a map that can capture the geolocation coordinates and specific details. And we'll go ahead and format that up. Again, I just have to bind that to the appropriate control. So we'll go over here and we'll hit location that's coming into. We'll give it a name. Same thing. Going to make this location. And instead of a roadmap, we'll do satellite imagery, and perhaps we'll zoom into the building level, and we'll make this control small instead of medium. So that's us designed the form, but what I want to do is apply some business rules to this form. And so in this case, I'm just going to go ahead and go up to my rules engine. I'm going to add a simple rule. Now this is going to be for my important customers. And what I'm going to do is say when the customer equals, and let's pick one of our key sponsors here, Hyperfish, then I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to set the priority for these guys to high. Because whenever they register an issue, I want to make sure that we're on top of it straight away. Important partner of ours. So we'll save that. With that, we've got the form done. We'll go ahead and publish it, give it a name. That's going to go ahead and register now, and it's going to tell me there's another form with the exact same name. Now, luckily, because the demo gods can do funny things to us here, I'm going to grab one that I baked earlier. So we'll just pop over here, and you'll see it in a minute. But what I'm going to do now is customize the workflow. And so what I want to do is take this workflow and enhance it a little bit. Now, it turns out Acme, while they use Salesforce, they use Office 365, they're adding a proliferation of tools and technologies to their portfolio. So they're leveraging things like Slack for real-time collaboration within their teams. They're leveraging things like Twilio to send out bulk SMS messages. And so what I want to do is enhance this workflow a little bit to take advantage of those different providers that Acme's leveraging. So what we're going to do now is go ahead and just make some customizations. So the first thing I want to do is engage with my sales team through Slack. Now, the reason I want to do this is because when you have issues with a customer and you're a salesperson, any salespeople in the room? Anyone ever had to sell anything in the room? Yeah? So a few guys down there. The last thing you ever want to do as a salesperson is go talk to an angry customer. So it's useful to know when there's a problem with the customer. Now, when we start to automate all this, some of that discussion that used to happen between sales and customer support gets lost, so we want to update people. In this case, Acme's chosen to use Slack for this. So we're just going to post a message into Slack. We'll drop that over here. And I just want to show you how quickly and easily you can connect all the different platforms that you care about within your organization. So here I'm going to choose Slack. I'll choose a public channel that I've got in my Slack organization. We'll go ahead and we'll look up the different channels, and you'll see we've got this Acme incident response channel here. So I want to post a message to that. And in this case, I'm going to say critical situation with, and we'll put in the customer name. Grabbing the customer name is a simple workflow variable here. So we'll insert that. We'll go ahead and we'll say, please rally the troops. And with that, we've got that Slack message configured now. So that's going to post into the channel when that workflow runs. The next thing I want to do, I found that when I send my Acme fleet folks around, and Ian showed a bit of this in the mobile app, they need good instruction on what has to be done. So based on the type of problem the customer's reported, I want to be able to give them the standard operating procedures for resolving cases with that type of product. So what I'm going to do is interact with my file sync and share provider. In this case, Acme's chosen to use Dropbox for this. So what I'm going to do is grab my workflow operations, and I'm going to assign a file from Dropbox into a workflow variable that I can use further down in the workflow. So in this case, I'll go into set the variable value, and I'm going to choose a file type. When I choose that, the workflow environment is aware of the different data types, and it's giving me options to connect to my file sync and share providers. I'll choose Dropbox for business. We'll go ahead and choose the Acme connection. Now, it's important to look at each of these connections because they control the level of access that you have to these different SaaS providers. From there, I'm going to go ahead and specify that it should use my credentials, and I'll specify the path to the file. So in this case, it's my SOP docs. And what I'm going to do is specify the name of a file. Now we have a standard file naming convention here. It's Acme SOP underscore, and then we have the name of the product. So I'll just grab that out of the workflow variables. And we'll drop that name of the product in here. And obviously it's a document file, so it's a docx format. And so with that, I've specified where to go and get that standard operating procedure document from. Now I want to assign a case to an Acme technician. Now I've already configured this task. I'm sending a job request out to someone. But what I want to do is attach that file. So to see how quickly and easily I can attach that file, I just go into my workflow variables. I see that I've got this option of the SOP document. I insert that. And now when I send out that task, that notification by email, then my service representative is going to get that SOP document. So we've got that wired up. Now we want to do a few last little bits and pieces. The first thing is I want to resolve the case. So what I'm going to do is show you how easily we can integrate with systems like Salesforce to be able to update things like case status. So I'll go ahead and choose Update a Record. We're going to go drop that in here. We want to choose the connection to the Salesforce environment. And it's going to go ahead and it's going to interrogate my Salesforce infrastructure. It's going to look at all the entity types that I've got in the environment. And in this case, I'm going to specify case. I'm going to choose the case ID because I've created a case earlier in this workflow. I'll insert that. And when I choose case, it goes ahead and it looks up the metadata for a case, the schema of that entity. And in this case, I'm going to go ahead and specify the status. We'll go and mark that as closed. And then with that, we've got this workflow pretty much wrapped up. So, we've got that part done. Now, there's one last thing I want to do, because Acme is a very progressive company. We talked a little bit earlier, you heard from Peter and from Jeff, about the IoT, the Internet of Things. So Acme is getting wired up to the Internet of Things, and they want to find a way to quickly interact with all the devices in their organization. Now, Acme, interestingly enough, has come to Nintex and said, hey, Nintex, show me your roadmap for connectors. What are the SaaS providers you're connecting to? And it turns out we couldn't get one built fast enough for them. They had to have it today. So we said to them, no problem at all, Acme, we've got an option for you. We have an extensibility framework here at Nintex. We call it Nintex Extensions, and it allows you to specify your own connectors to the systems you care most deeply about at your own pace. Now, to do that, we use something called Swagger. Now, I'm betting half the people in this room technical, half the people non-technical. So for the technical people, you'll understand this. The non-technical people, just laugh at the technical people, right? This is Swagger. Now, it's not my job here to explain this to you today. In fact, for me now, I have a bunch of people that deal with this kind of stuff, so I don't have to focus on it too much. But this is essentially a descriptor file. It just specifies, hey, there's a SaaS provider out there, and I want to be able to interact with it. This is how I want to do it. So that's that Swagger file. So the question is, how do we get that into the Nintex environment to do something useful? So with that, we'll just jump out of this workflow that I've been working on. We'll go ahead and bring in one of these Swagger documents. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over here to Nintex Extensions. This is where I add my own connectors. Show you how quickly and easily I can do this. So I click on the plus there. I choose a file. I want to grab my Swagger document. That's this one over here. We're going to go ahead and hit Next. Now what happens in the background is I do a little bit of validation of that document, make sure it's all correct, specify how I connect to this environment. And then I want to specify an icon that shows up in the Workflow Designer. So I've got one that I prepared earlier over here. That pops up and we publish it. So now I have a new connector. So the question is, how do we see that connector in action? So if I go over to my workflow now, we're just going to go ahead and we'll grab that workflow that we were looking at earlier. And we just want to embellish it. And so what you'll see in the toolbox now is I have this HTTP Remote Control API connector. That's a pretty fancy name. But essentially this is designed to deal with lighting systems within Acme's control room. So if I want to deal with a lighting system, I just drag this in. I go ahead. I choose a bulb location. In this case, it would be the entry. I choose a color value. In this case, I might want to make it orange to just denote, hey, we've got a bit of an incident. Better make sure I turn that light on at the same time. It's that easy to interact with devices and sensors in your environment. So now, probably really interesting for you to actually see this all in action. So we'll just jump out of here now. As I said, I was a smart guy. I baked one earlier for this. And so we're going to go ahead and grab our incident management application. And we're going to see how that form renders up. Now, it's quick and easy. I click on the link to the public web form. I copy this URL. I paste it up in here. We go ahead and we load it. You'll see that form renders up that I designed before. In this case, I'm going to go ahead and specify my customer. So we'll say Hyperfish. Now, you'll immediately see that that little priority jumped to high from low, right? That's that business rule in action right now. I go ahead and I put in the name. This is going to be their CTO, Chris Johnson. You can catch him out in the hallway over there later on. He has a problem with his PC. Chris is sad, right? Now, the problem with Chris's PC, well, Chris over the years, and trust me, I've known him since back in that strategy of 25 years ago, his real problem is, well, I really would like a Mac, but sometimes it's hard because I worked at Microsoft. All right? How about that? So we're going to submit that. So that's Chrissy's sad, tragic case. It's been submitted into the environment. Check it out. Something just happened down over here for those of you who didn't notice it. We got that amber light, right? So we've got an issue. Yeah, that's worth a round of applause. So Chris has got an issue. We have to do something about that. We have to find out what's going on. Now, one of the things that happens here is, as you saw, I'm registering all that information within a Salesforce environment. So Chris's issue is going to go ahead and get put into that Salesforce environment. In fact, if we jump out over here and we look at the instance details, you'll see I've got this workflow running right now. It's gone ahead and done a bunch of stuff. It's created a case, it's turned that light on for us, so that's all fantastic. If we go into Salesforce right now and we refresh that view of Salesforce, you'll see that we've added from the workflow a new case. It's going to pop up here in the view right now. You'll see at the top there it says new, so that's that case in there. But now what I want to do is show you how I interact with that. So I'm now the service technician. I've been sent a job to go out and service Chrissy's PC needs, give him that Mac. And you'll see I've got my standard operating procedure document there attached to that file. Now, interestingly, I could respond to this email, but what I want to do is show you the same experience on the iPhone. So again, we've got that Acme fleet management application up on the screen there. And as this loads up, it's going to go ahead and it's going to query that Workflow Cloud environment, and you're going to see I've got a task there, a job that I have to go out and do. So I'm going to click on that, and this gives me a really fast way to deal with it, and I'm just going to say I resolve Chrissy's issues, just like that. Nice and simple, on my phone, in my pocket, dealt with that problem. And that's going to go ahead and kick off a few other aspects of the workflow. If we go back to our Salesforce environment, that's going to go and interact with the Salesforce platform. It's going to help us close that case. So if we refresh the page over here right now, what we should see, if the world's a happy place on the demo front, is that case has moved to closed. And the workflow, lo and behold, has gone ahead and updated everyone in the incident response room with a nice little green light here. Green is good. We've resolved the issue. Time to move on with the day. So hopefully that shows you how Acme can take the power of all their connected systems, their IoT strategy, and dramatically improve the way they do business, the way they interact with their customers, and their responsiveness to their customers' needs. But there's one more thing Acme has to do, because Acme is a fast-growing company. They're one of these companies that's embracing that digital transformation. And they want to make sure they're operating at an optimal level. Now, as they expand globally, they start to work with more and more customers. They're struggling to keep up with the support load. And so what they do is they start working with subcontractors. Now, that's good because it helps Acme scale, but at the same time, could be slightly problematic for them if they don't keep it under control. So what I've got down here is a slightly more sophisticated version of that workflow. It's got all sorts of fancy logic in it, things like state machines going on, but ultimately what this is doing for Acme is splitting the work between subcontractors and their internal people, and Acme wants to track how that's working for them. Now that's nice and simple. We talked a little bit about what we're doing in the analytics space, talked about being able to do that predictive analytics to figure out what to do next. To be able to bring that part of the Nintex Workflow Cloud, you just drag in one of these Hawkeye beacons, and that beacon specifies metadata around the process to help you understand what's going on in your business. So in this case, I go to a beacon, I specify the names of data that I want to capture. So in this point, I want to capture the type of the agent, and we're going to say this is an external contractor. So we've added that. We want a little bit of a beacon here that's tracking location, and we're just going to grab the workflow details where we caught the location earlier. So we'll go down here. And then the last thing we want to do is just track the severity or the priority of this case. So we'll put the priority in here. And the same thing, we'll pop into the workflow variables. We'll grab that priority value over here, insert that. So now we're capturing a set of metadata properties associated with this workflow. If I publish that and I jump up and look at my Hawkeye dashboard, I've been running this a bit earlier on before I came to this event. You'll see now that we're tracking what's happening across Acme's operations worldwide. So you see I have all my different severities. That's the mix of the different case types that I'm getting. I see my service requests going up over time, and I can see all my different providers and get a look at what they're doing across the country, the different areas they're interacting with my customers. But more importantly, I was tracking SLA in there, and what I'm looking at is the average time to respond. So I can see we've had 2,377 cases, and 577 of those we've had problems with SLA infringements. We haven't dealt with them fast enough. Now, if you look at that average time to close chart, you'll see it kind of got bad around about 2015, but it's been getting a little better over time. But what I want to do is have a drill down. I want to be able to understand for each of those subcontractors how it's all working out. So if I click on this one over here, you'll see they've got 124 infringements. Not too bad. It's not the lion's share of the infringements. But what's troubling me about this is over the last year, they've got worse and worse and worse in terms of their performance. So now I've got some insight I can use to go ahead and improve my business by looking at all the operational aspects.